So let's take a look at some reverb and some delays. There's a ton of options out there. I feel like there's definitely no shortage of options out there. I don't know why that one came out the way that it did. Oh, there it goes. And there's a lot of variation of ways that you can find, and there's a lot of things that people swear by. I'm a fan of the Waves H-Verb. That one's always been, or H-Reverb. That one's always been a really good one, just because it's easy to maneuver and adjust the timing because it's really visually, it's all there. We want a longer verb, we can make it happen. Let's take a look at this real quick. Actually, let's. What I'm going to do is let me find out what my main verb is, and then let's take a look at the reverb. Okay, so this one's actually, if we move over to this one, this is actually the snare reverb. Just to give you an idea, so reverb is using a multitude of reflections to emulate some sort of spatial environment. So like a lot of times the reverbs are like tied or associated to spatial environments that people can kind of wrap their brain around. So it's like, hey, this is supposed to be the sound of your closet, and this is the sound of a cathedral, and this is the sound of a club. And they kind of, they emulate those spaces. And there's a couple reasons why they can emulate those spaces, and that's because engineers will go measure all those spaces. They'll just fire off a test tone in a giant cathedral, and by using a multitude of mics throughout that space, they can actually measure what the reverb sounds like in that space, and they can drop that emulation into a plugin. They could basically recreate that into a plugin. And they do a great job. They've been doing a fantastic job with that for many, many years. But we're looking at basically a multitude of reflections. So we're seeing a wash of reflections, where delay is more single point reflections, or reflections that we can identify. So I always say, hey, listen, if you're hearing someone say hello, and then the next line comes back and it goes hello, that is, if you're identifying what that is when it returns, it's delay. If you can't even understand what it did when it came back, it's reverb. So that's typically the way that is. So right now we're looking at reverb. But let's take a look at what we do with this. One of the goals a lot of times in making a reverb feel natural is tucking it inside of the space of the natural decay of the source, and then just bumping it out just a little bit. So we're really getting just a bit bigger of a sound. That's what I'm doing here, and that's why this space looks so short. But let's look at what happens when we make it long, and we'll bring it back to short.
And our Christmas tree gives me that crazy feeling that I'm loving, baby. Drinks and laughs and all the photographs that make me wonder, do we look younger? Simply wonderful feeling.
So you can kind of hear, when I was A-Bing with it on and with it off, you can hear what it's doing. It's just filling it out just enough. Let's go to some delay, though. Honestly, delay is extremely useful in a lot of cases, but it's definitely most useful on the vocal. So the vocal has just that touch of it. You can't really hear it because it's designed to feel natural, so it's kind of buried inside of what's happening. So there's a nice short slap. I'm going to turn it up and accentuate it just so you can hear it and let you see it. This is a UAD, the precision delay. Let's take a listen. I'm going to turn it up real quick as we go. This is on the vocal.
You and me and our Christmas tree gives me that crazy feeling that I'm loving, baby. Drinks and laughs and all the photographs that make me wonder.
So a couple things that are great about delay. Probably one of my favorite things about delay is if it's in stereo, and it really should be in stereo, for a vocal, it gives it a ton of body, but you can actually expound upon that body by shifting the left channel's delay time from the right channel's delay time. So like a typical, you just walk in and set up a you use a preset. A lot of them are not like that. So out of the box, a lot of them are not designed to be offset. So like this is probably one of those very few areas in terms of reverb and delay are probably the places that I use presets like the absolute least to almost never. And I would encourage you to be creative with it because a lot of times they have a certain sound that they're going for in their preset, but a lot of times they're missing the mark on the big, on getting to the big, and definitely with the delay. Really, it's as simple as we just need a basic dual delay, and on here it doesn't really tell you this very easily, but this is the left channel, this is the right channel. And if you notice, one of the timings is 150 milliseconds and the other one is 125. And that shift between those two to not be the same is what makes it feel wide left to right. Let me change this one back to 150. Let you listen to it.
You and me and our Christmas tree gives me that crazy feeling that I'm loving, baby. Drinks and laughs and all the photographs that make me wonder, do we look younger?
And what you notice is that as I moved it to 100, the further I got away from 150, the wider it got. Now, if you need to go back and listen to that again, put some headphones on. Like if you weren't catching that, put some headphones on. You'll notice the big difference, the bigness that just filled it in. Now, the great part about this, and maybe there's just an easy way to just kind of, like if we visualize this, the reverb is floating underneath the mix of everybody else, and the delay is floating underneath the mix of everybody else because their volumes aren't as loud as everybody else's original sources. They combine here, so they're right underneath them. They will stick out anytime anybody stops, though. They'll stick out at the tail end. They'll stick out at some sort of any position where everybody just dead stops. They'll stick out, so we have to automate them a lot of times. But notice they sound way overdone, and what we do now is we fit it into the mix. So we're going to open up the mix. We have this wonderful delay. We got to slide it into place. It's too much right now. We can tuck it back in. Listen.
You and me and our Christmas tree gives me that crazy feeling that I'm loving, baby. Drinks and laughs and all the photographs that make me wonder, do we look younger? Simply wonderful feelings.
Last thing to note about that, reverbs and delays absolutely need EQ. So the problem is that if you think about the way that works out, we're adding a duplicate of whatever the source is. We're adding a multitude of reflections in the reverb path. We're adding maybe a duplicate slapback off the delay. We need to shape it in a way and be wise about the shape that we use. And so like that's like a whole other level. Like that's the pro level of working with reverbs and delays. But it's typical. We need some EQs up there to help us work. Sometimes if they're too splashy, those EQs are simply just taking the highs down. In this instance, we actually got rid of some of the low mid and actually accentuated some of the highs to get a little bit more life up there. But, reverb and delay absolutely needed in any mix down, and they're just awesome. They're fun to work with.